Hey guys, so kind of crazy that I suddenly making multiple videos back to back, but hey, I got ideas for once, so here we are. So I've kind of been planning this for a while now. I've actually had this, not script, but like note page on my computer for like 2, 3 weeks. I the only reason this didn't come out sooner is because I wanted to wait for this update to come out, the optimization one, the Showtime skins, all that. And now that that's out and I got my opinion out on it, this is going to be very podcasty, very mellow, and I'm going to be doing this for a couple different games that I'm currently in just because I've been wanting to do this. I've had a lot of ideas when it comes to these games, and obviously, I have a lot of time spent in some of these games, so I don't want to say that like my opinion is the right opinion or any of that garbage, but like I do have enough experience with the game to know where some pain points for the games are and throw out some suggestions that could definitely improve them. Now, typically when I review certain updates or certain games, I will throw my suggestions in the ring, but this type of video specifically is just dedicated to these suggestions. So I'm going in a lot more detail with these. I'm just going to kind of ramble my own thoughts for a while. I will have some background footage at some point that will play, probably of Dandy's World, while I'm talking about these, but compared to my previous videos, which are usually like 10, 20, maximum 30 minutes, depending on what I'm talking about, and the suggestions are usually like really brief at the end, this is just solely dedicated to quite a few suggestions I have for the game. I'm going to be talking about my reasoning behind them and some of the biggest pain points that this game has in a way that isn't very scripted. A lot of videos that I see on YouTube lately in regards to Dandy's World, why it's kind of, I'm not going to say falling off because it still has hundreds of thousands of people, but it's definitely kind of stagnating, I would say, where there's not a lot of things to go out and do right now. And especially for players who have everything, like myself, it does make it really hard to find any interest playing the game. And so those are going to be some of the pain points I'm going to be talking about, as well as other just general pain points that makes this game perhaps less than perfect. And that's kind of it. So grab some popcorn, grab a snack, do what you gotta do, and we're just gonna jump into it. So again, there's not really any sort of structure outside of some notes I have in front of me and the wiki page to make sure I'm not babbling off my rocker. So without further ado, let's do this. First thing I'm going to start with is obviously probably the most important one, and that is the tunes. So, this whole first section I have strictly dedicated to tunes, specifically tunes that need changes, buffs, or complete reworks. And I'm going to be giving my takes as to what those should look like and provide some reasoning. So, first off, just straight buffs. There are two characters off the top of my head that I think just immediately need some buffs to become more relevant, and that is Flight, the Easter character, and Toodles. I think both these characters are very niche in their current state, and unlike other characters who are niche because they have a very specific playstyle, the ones that come to my head there are like Connie, Razzle Dazzle, Scraps. Those characters are all characters who have, they're niche because their playstyle is so specific, right? Their stats are very specific. The way they play is very specific. Like, they're not supposed to play like a normal tune would play. But Flight and Toodles both definitely play like a normal tune, and yet they just really feel like they are undermined lately, especially with the addition of like the candies, like speed candy, stamina candy, extraction speed candy, all that. And like during the Easter update, one of the trinkets, the glazed fondue bag, I hope I said that right. That trinket, which makes all candies more effective, So it made it so that in turn, these two characters especially just got hit pretty hard because both their abilities only buff you by 15%. So Flight Speed Boost is only 15%, and Toodles, just in general, only buffs 15%. So if you look at some of the items in the game, a lot of them are actually 25% or even 50%. So they definitely need a buff. It's pretty bad. It's something that can actually make them a little bit more relevant. We already saw that Tegan and V got buffs in the most recent update, and I think it actually put them really well in line with the other characters who were good, if not really good. So hopefully, excuse me, hopefully Flight and Toodles will eventually kind of get a similar treatment just because of the fact that they are so underutilized right now. My suggestion for both of them is also really simple. It's just bump them up to 20% buffs. Instead of 15% buffs, give them 20% buffs, maybe even 25%. I think 25% might be a little too much though, but I think 20% would be a little bit reasonable. Especially because the effects don't last that long. Like, they, if off the top of my head here, Toodles is 10 seconds, which is actually pretty good, but Flights is only like 3 to 5 seconds, so you're really not getting that much out of the boost. So making it a little bit better would definitely compensate for the fact that it is such a minimal boost overall. Yeah, so those were the two that just right away needed some buffs, needed something. Next is what I literally in my notes I just have this down as rework. These are characters that just need reworked like badly. So some of these may be completely controversial, but I don't care. I really don't care. I'm gonna talk about them anyways. So first off on the chopping block is actually Poppy. So yeah, Poppy. She's a starter character, right? She's one of the 2 starter characters you can get, and I think a lot of people will agree that out of the 2 starter characters, Poppy is definitely the weaker one. And this isn't because of stats, because obviously they have the same stats outside of Boxton having a little bit more extraction speed. But Poppy's ability is really bad, right? Her ability makes it so that anytime you take damage from any source, you get a 50% speed buff. Now, on paper, this does sound really good, and in some cases, it actually is. The problem is not that it's a bad ability. The problem that I have with Poppy is that it doesn't help you learn the game, right? It doesn't help you learn that you need to be evading Twisteds, right? Like, if you go and look at Boxton, I think Boxton is actually a great example of a starter character because Boxton, the way that Boxton works is that he incentivizes playing as a team and he incentivizes doing machines and learning the objective, whereas Poppy doesn't do that, right? She's supposed to be the character to help you learn how to get away from Twisteds, and the problem is that her ability only does that after you have failed to do that objective. After you have failed to evade the Twisted, only then does the ability proc. So it feels more like a second wind than it does actually teaching you the fundamentals of the game. So my suggestion here is that rather than being activated upon being hit, it would instead be activated upon any Twisted spotting you. Now, obviously, to compensate for this, it would need a pretty drastic nerf. So my compensation was that it could be only 20% speed boost for 3 seconds, or instead of being a speed boost, it could be a visual cue, essentially. So whenever you get spotted, yeah, you have the little visual cue on the bottom of the screen with like the little eyeball, but my idea was that Poppy's ability would also tell you what direction they were coming from if you didn't want this to be a speed boost ability anymore. I think having a directional cue would be a great way for both new players to learn how to evade these characters by giving them a little bump in the direction of where the Twisted are coming from, but also anyone who just wants to pick up Poppy can get benefits out of this by having an ability that tells you where Twisteds are coming from. Now, sure, you might not be able to evade them, but it tells you where they're coming from, right? I think this ability rework would just really help new players, because one of the biggest pain points for Dandy's World right now is definitely new players. Boxton he's a good starter character, don't get me wrong, but getting from Boxton to other characters can take some time, and especially once you get past a lot of the early starter characters like Poppy, Boxton, Tisha, some of those characters, getting from there to like further on is kind of a pain point for sure. I know that a lot of new players struggle early in this phase when you don't have trinkets and the best option you have is Boxton. So having Poppy also be really helpful would be nice, right? Having a character that is also helpful in their own regard rather than only being helpful when you're hurt, I think would be very, very helpful. The next character I have on the chopping block is Scraps. Scraps has definitely been considered a weak character, right? Personally, I love Scraps. I think that Scraps is not exactly a great character, but I love playing as her. I love her playstyle, I love what she does, especially once they added it so that you could pull yourself to machines. I loved Scraps from the get-go. I love her personality, I love everything about her. But I will have to admit, Scraps kind of sucks, right? She is slow, she doesn't do machines very well, and her best stat is unfortunately the stat that doesn't impact you very much, which is stamina, right? So, my suggestion, and this is where I kind of mentioned earlier, like, hey, some of these might be a little controversial. Here it comes, okay? Here it comes. My rework suggestion is to make it so that Scraps can grapple onto any possible surface that is within reach. So what I mean by this is not that you can grapple onto any wall or ceiling or any of that jazz. That would be funny as crap, but obviously that'd be super, super silly. My suggestion here is basically that Scraps and her tail would operate on a horizontal plane, very similar to how it works right now. And essentially any surface that is flat enough to grapple onto, or anything just that doesn't bug Scraps out, is grappleable. Grappleable, that's a word. So that's my suggestion. Rather than only having tunes or machines be what you can grapple to, I think the ability to grapple onto any sort of surface would be a massive upgrade to Scraps' current design, and it would make her actually really fun. Now, obviously you might need to tweak some stats or something to make it a little more reasonable so you're not just like grappling everywhere all the time. And also probably giving it a longer cooldown, of course, because right now it is only like 20 seconds or something like that. So you would probably need to increase the cooldown. You would probably need to like tinker around with it. But I think it would make Scraps a lot more viable and a lot more fun to engage with compared to the current design that is really unfun to use in any capacity. Next, I have Shrimpo. This is another character that might be controversial, I don't know. I don't think he should be a joke or a challenge character, so I think he should be a fully viable character. So the reason I say this is because, number one, who uses this guy? Like, honestly, I don't see anyone use Shrimpo anymore. Like, not even as, like, the joke or the challenge character. Nobody runs Shrimpo anymore. So I think having it to where Shrimpo is an actual character would be a lot more interesting than just having this silly joke character that no one ever touches. So my suggestion was just to switch him. No longer make him this challenge character. In my notes, I said give him maybe a survivalist playstyle. Something that is very self-rewarding, which would make sense. But my last line for this is literally just make him usable instead of a joke at best. Like, he is kind of a joke right now. He's kind of a joke right now. Next is going to, so the next two are both going to be Holiday Twisteds, specifically Ginger and Bobbette. Both these characters are characters that I would say, out of the characters that have recycled abilities, these two got it the worst. Ginger is literally just Cosmo's heal, but slightly better, and Bobbette's is just Connie's ability, but stationary. So, and her passive is garbage. So, I tried to come up with something for these two. This is the best I came up with. So for Ginger, I said that her heal should be replaced either with a ability that, at the cost of her own health, would give Survivor, or other toons I guess, would give them all their stamina back, or boosts, like very significant boosts. Or Ginger, rather than being a direct heal, would instead drop a heal as an item similar to Coco's Bonbons, of course at the cost of her own hearts. That way, it can be used at any point in time, rather than having to directly find the player and heal them. I don't know how I feel about these as much, but I just think it needs to be different than Cosmos, and these are the best I could come up with. I think having either a heal that can be picked up by anybody, or a similar mechanic to Cosmos, except instead it just gives you an insane boost or something, would be interesting. But I don't know. I would kind of lean more towards the second option, where you're getting a heal out of it, not just a boost, but I digress. For Bobbette, I said that the active ability just needs to be reworked in general. It is just a worse version of Connie's. And I said that the passive needs to be buffed pretty bad. If you don't know, the passive is whenever you're pretty much on Bobbette, you get stamina back slightly faster. It's not good. The radius is really, really small, and 50% speed or stamina regeneration is really bad. So, my thoughts that I put down were the passive should be at least 150% stamina regeneration, and the active should now instead drop a present, essentially being a deployable that not only blocks line of sight from Twisteds, if used correctly, but can also be interacted with by any toon to get a free random item. Of course, this would have a very, very long cooldown, if not like a once per floor only use, but I think it would be really fun to see. So, and it would make it way more interesting than Connie's ability, while still having the idea of Connie's ability being able to get away from Twisteds by having a giant, like a giant present that just blocks the way. I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but that's that. Okay, so next thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of the game after the toons was just little small things, mostly related to certain mechanics the game has. So first off, I had trinkets. So the biggest thing that I think comes as a problem to trinkets, it's actually kind of twofold. One of my biggest problems is that twisted research to get trinkets feels very unrewarding. So I think there definitely needs to be something to make the research aspect of the game more interesting. Currently, what it is that you completely fill out a character's research by encountering them X amount of times, and your reward is their respective trinket. The problem recently is that a lot of these trinkets just straight up aren't good, especially compared to trinkets from older characters. Like, for example, Shelly and V's trinkets were both really good, right? Vimo, which completely fills out one machine per floor for free. Shelly's trinket, which makes skill checks a lot more frequent for you, so characters who have high skill check values get insane value on machines because of that, to the point that I've even argued Participation Award is better than Vimo in some cases. So, with that being said, then you look at newer main toons, or just newer toons in general, right? Like, Bobbette's trinket is totally worthless. Bassie's trinket, the Whispering Flower or whatever it's called, that one is also just, I wouldn't say that one's as useless, but it's still pretty useless. The ability to see items during panic mode is very borderline useless. So I don't really know how to fix this. I mean, the one I have on my notes is that old trinkets just need to be buffed in some cases, like certain characters that their trinkets are also kind of useless. There are a couple that, you know, aren't that great. Like, for example, if we're gonna make Shrimpo a actual viable character, his trinket needs to be buffed as well to not be a direct nerf, but instead a buff of some kind. How that would work, I genuinely don't know, but it would be interesting. Same with like Cole's trinket, which is just a piece of coal. Like, that would also need to be some sort of upgrade. But the point is, some of the older trinkets do need to be reworked or buffed, and also just new trinkets that come out need to be useful, right? Especially with newer characters coming out, like even Blotz, right? Blotz trinket, if I remember correctly, makes it so that if you miss a skill check, you don't alert anyone. Blot is a character that takes a very long time to unlock and a very long time to complete research for because of the fact that Blot is a rare character. The fact that the trinket you get for completing that research is absolutely useless, not only to your character, but to everybody, feels like kind of a slap in the face. Unless you're playing a character that has like 1-star skill check, this just isn't going to help you at all. So new trinkets need to actually be useful to the game, and a lot of trinkets probably just need a direct upgrade or buff in some regard, because a lot of current trinkets just do not feel impactful to the game, especially when you have these borderline game-breaking or strategy-breaking trinkets in the game, like Participation Award, like Vimo, even things like Dog Plush, which on paper isn't that crazy, but is actually insanely useful to certain characters, right? So like Dog Plush, Speedy Shoes, all that stuff. We need trinkets more in line with that, right? If you're gonna allow these game-breaking items, you need to compensate with the other trinkets that aren't on par with that being on par with that. But I would rather see that than nerfing the really good trinkets, right? Because, like, I don't want Vimo to be nerfed, but Wrench is a direct downgrade to Vimo, right? So, I don't know. It's something that needs to definitely be addressed because a lot of trinkets currently just aren't good. So, the other thing I had as well, and this is just more of a nitpicky thing, but I think trinkets that you earn through research should also be, like, directly aiding the toon that you get it from, right? A great example of this is R&D's trinket, which allows you to get a speed buff on certain floors, right? Specifically, I believe it is on even floors, which when you're playing Razzle and Dazzle, you're incredibly slow on even floors. So this trinket is a direct buff to aid Razzle Dazzle, right? Then you look at characters like Louis, and his trinket is that you just get a buff on odd floors, and it's like, well, but that doesn't really help Louis, right? I mean, it can, but it doesn't really help Louis. Whereas, like, Razzle Dazzle directly aids one of Razzle Dazzle's biggest weaknesses, right? And in that case, Razzle Dazzle's research was actually very helpful to Razzle Dazzle. So I would like to see more trinkets based on that, maybe. So something like, another great example was the glazed fondue bag. Again, I hope I'm saying that right, but that is also very helpful to Coco because her little bonbon thing, I believe, does get aided by that. And even if it doesn't, it aids a plethora of other items that are helpful to Coco and every other character in the game, right? That is a good example of a good research trinket that is good to go for, right? It was an incentive to get that trinket because it was one of the better trinkets during the Easter update compared to, you know, the Whispering Flower and all that garbage. So I think that trinkets earned through research do need to have some sort of direct correlation or direct buff to the character that it's being researched from. Again, very nitpicky, but I think it would make research more interesting, and it would aid the idea that research needs to be buffed in general. Next up, I just want to talk very briefly about stats in the game. Specifically skill check and stamina, they just don't feel as impactful as they could be, right? Like movement speed is very impactful in the game, right? If you're a 1-star movement speed, you're very slow. And like extraction speed, obviously that one's impactful. Stealth, little less impactful, but there is still a pretty big difference between like 1 and 5 stars, or even 1 and 3 stars, 3 and 5 stars. There is enough of an impact there. Like, if you actually haven't gone and seen like how stealth impacts the game, go and do it, because it's really interesting. You can get spotted as a 1-star character from up to 70 meters away from your location. It's really, like, really big. In comparison, 5-star characters, I believe it's only 30 meters. Or no, 40 meters, sorry. Not 30 meters. It's 40 meters. So there is a 30-meter difference in the stars for stealth. It's actually very interesting. But the problem I have is that in comparison to these other stats, which actually do have quite a bit of impact on the game, stamina and skill check really don't, especially stamina. So I do have a little bit of a just suggestion here when it comes to making these stats more impactful. For skill check, I said that it should impact the chance of your skill check as well as the size, because currently it only impacts how big your skill check window is and how much value each skill check brings. I think it should also impact how often you're getting them. Not by much, like maybe, 5 stars is only like a 5% increase or something like that, but I think it should impact the chance of getting them as well, because it just doesn't feel like that great to have a big skill check stat, you know what I mean? So I think having it also impact the chance of getting them, even if only by a little bit, would make it more interesting, right? It would be more impactful, because then you have to be more aware of your skill check. And it also makes things like Participation Award, Magnifying Glass, all those add-ons also impactful, right? Because now if you, again, say like 5-star characters only have a 5% boost, well, Shelly's Trinket Participation Award is a 25% boost to the overall chance of getting a skill check. You would now have a 55% chance of getting a skill check, which would be very impactful to the game, right? So I think it would just be a little bit interesting, more impactful. For stamina, and this one might be a little difficult to kind of tweak, which is why I'm a little less confident on this one, but I do think it's something that needs to be addressed. I said that stamina should impact regen rate, or your stat specifically should impact how quickly you get stamina back, not just how much stamina you have, right? I think characters who have high stamina should be able to get their stamina back quicker than characters who have low stamina. It just makes sense from, a basic logical standpoint that characters who have more stamina also get their stamina faster, right? Now, again, I don't know how you would adjust this balance-wise to make sure that you're not able to just constantly be running, but I would think that it would just be more interesting than the current stamina stat, which really doesn't do anything. I can play as Gigi all the time, who has a 1-star stamina stat, and I almost rarely ever have a problem with my stamina. Ever. Stamina is not the common... if I'm having a problem, it's not because of Gigi's stamina. It's just because, I'm in a blackout and 3 Twisteds see me in the same chase, and there's nothing I can do because they're just seeing me back to back to back, right? Which, in that case, is it really a stamina problem, or it's the fact that I can't see anything? And trust me, I will get to gameplay and blackouts, because I have a lot of problems with blackouts. So, yeah, skill check and stamina, I think, just need to be reworked or adjusted to be a little bit more impactful, especially when, again, similar to the trinkets problem, where a lot of old trinkets are just inherently more impactful. With stats, it's kind of the same thing, where some stats are just inherently more impactful. It doesn't make sense that these other stats aren't, right? So I think it should be something that's a little bit more impacted by how much stats, or how big your stat is on that, on skill check and stamina, because it would make those stats more appealing and more interesting, and as a result, it would also help a lot of characters who currently just have a problem in the game. For example, Scraps has a very high stamina stat, right? If it's not 4, then it's 5. It's somewhere up there. I know that. So if she also had the ability to recover stamina faster, that would also aid her gameplay style as a whole. Because even if she doesn't get like the reworked ability I talked about earlier, it would still make it so that she has a direct advantage in terms of running longer, especially since she's slower, right? So it would kind of compensate for the fact that she runs slower by being able to run longer. Stuff like that would be interesting. Next, I want to talk about skins. So if you watched my review a couple days back, or maybe, whenever I get this out, it might be yesterday, I don't know yet. If you watched that video, I briefly mentioned the skin cycle, right? The skins that have been coming out, and the fact that skins have been very targeted to certain characters lately, right? First off, it was Pebble, right? First, Pebble was getting a lot of skins, and it was like, wow, that's a lot of Pebble skins. Then we shifted, and Louis was getting a lot of skins, right? Like, both event updates, he got a skin. I think Connie did too on both events, so, like, wow. And then started noticing that after Louis, Yada was also getting quite a few skins. Blot recently got his skin, so that was, and Blot needed one, so like whatever there. And now we're starting to see as well, like V has quite a few skins. So my problem with this is that it's very obvious that very certain characters are getting more skins than others, right? Like I just said, Louis has a lot of skins. Yada has a lot of skins. Pebble has a lot of skins. V is starting to get up there in terms of having quite a few skins. And I'm not just talking about like the default and the vintage. I'm talking a default, a vintage, a Game Pass for some of them. Actually, all 4 of those characters have 1, if not 2 Game Pass skins, plus other skins to buy as well, right? The problem that I'm having with this is that we're leaving a lot of other characters behind as a result, right? Like, don't get me wrong, the skins that are coming out, especially like the Showtime skins, I really like most of the Showtime skins. I think there was one I didn't like, and that was Louis. I thought Louis was, to be frank, kind of stupid, but that's also just because of my sentiment with Louis. It's not the fact that the skin is like a bad quality. It's actually a very good quality, and I know people who love the Louis skin. I just don't care for it, not because it's a bad skin, but because Louis has so many other skins that this one, in my eyes, just isn't as good as some of the other skins he's got. The, oh my god, what is the name of that skin? The Dapper one. That one that came out way back when during like the Christmas update. I think that one is superior to the Showtime skin. And even to all the other skins he's got since then, right? Like, the swirling one for Easter, that one just didn't need to come. I don't know why they made that skin. That one, like, again, I'm not trying to say that any of these skins are inherently bad for the game, but this is where I'm trying to go with this. A lot of skins just don't follow a theme, or don't follow any line of reasoning. It feels like they just come out for a certain character, and those happen to be the same characters. And as a result, a lot of older toons just aren't getting interesting skins. Now, luckily, like, with this update, for example, like, again, Blot needed a skin, so, like, that's cool. And Blot got 2, so it's like, that's even better, right? Now Blot's in a good place. And also, R&D getting a skin was, like, awesome. R&D got 2. R&D really needed some love. So, like, that was awesome to see. R&D mains are finally getting a W. But again, I can't help but look back, and it's like, where are skins for so many other characters who have just been kind of sitting idly by for a while, right? Like, Boxton, Poppy, Toodles, Gigi, they don't get skins, right? Shrimpo, Tegan, all these characters that just don't have nearly as many skins and are just idly sitting by with 3, and it's like, but why? Why are we not giving these characters the same amount of love as these characters, right? And that's a genuine question. I would love to hear from anyone on the development team who has a hand in skins as to why that is. Because currently it just feels like there is a lot of favoritism when it comes to these characters, and not that that's inherently a bad thing, but this is a style of game where every character appeals to somebody. That is just inherently the nature of these types of games, of these types of shows, of these types of media, right? These characters have been designed where anyone can be appealed to a certain character for their attributes and their flaws, right? That's how the characters have been made. Some people genuinely love Poppy or Boxton, even though they're starter characters. Their personalities, their character flaws, their designs inherently appeal to them more than any other character in the game, right? And yet, they're getting dropped off with only 3 skins for both of them, while these characters who have been in the game for less time already have 4, 5, maybe even 6 skins, right? That's a problem in my eyes. So, and the thing that further incentivizes this problem is the fact that some of these skins just don't follow a theme or any sort of line of reasoning. It's just a skin to come out, right? Like, again, the weird Louis skin that was just a bunch of swirls and color palette stuff during the Easter update. That one didn't need to come out. That one could have been any other skin for any other character that had a proper theme and gave love to that character, and instead we gave it right back to Louis with a skin that was nowhere near the level of quality that could have happened with, like, the Dapper skin. I love the Dapper skin because it actually looks good, it has a theme, and it has this level of quality on par with a lot of older skins. When this swirling one came out, the only thing I could think to myself is, why was this made? You know? Like, it didn't have anything that put it on par with the older skins, not only that Louis had gotten, but that many other characters had gotten. And then, like, with this most recent update, again, there's a couple skins that came out where I'm just like, why were these made or given to these characters? Like, again, another skin that I kind of had an issue with was, unfortunately, the R&D skin that was not part of the Showtime pack, but the other one that you could buy. It felt like just a recolor of the Seafoam skin, except with some minor differences. And not to diss on the skin or anything, like, I'm not trying to do that, but I was just like, again, this feels like it could have been something more. It could have been something given to another character who'd also been lacking some love lately. And R&D already got the Showtime skin, and I think the R&D Showtime skin is the best skin out of the pack, right? It is phenomenal. I love everything about that skin, like, as a whole. But, unfortunately, you have this amazing skin, and then you have this less than amazing skin right next to it, and it's just fallen into obscurity already. I don't see anyone talking about it. I don't see anyone using it, because it's just, not only is it just not as good as the Showtime skin, but it almost feels like a direct downgrade to other Razzle Dazzle skins, like the Seafoam skin, or even the Vintage, I would say, is a little bit more interesting, right? So that skin could have honestly gone to another character, and probably would have worked better. So, I'm not trying to diss anyone who develops these skins, anyone on the skin team or development team who made these skins. I'm not trying to diss you in any way, shape, or form. I love the work that y'all are able to put out for the game. I'm just saying that there needs to be a little bit more direction for where these skins are going, and a little bit more, I don't want to say quality, like, I don't want to say quality control, but there needs to be a theme or a level of reasoning to make each skin feel on par with the other skins coming out, right? The Showtime pack was a great example of this done right. Not just because it was under a pack, but, like, every character who got one of these skins, it made sense for them to get the skin. because they had something in relation to a Showtime feeling or theme, and to balance this, their skins looked very well done. They feel very good. They look very good. Those are good examples of skins done right. There's unfortunately multiple instances where this hasn't been done right. So that's kind of my rant about skins. I just think that moving forward, we don't need any more swirly Louie skins. We don't need any more recolor R&D skins. We don't need any of that. We need skins similar to what we got back in the red ticket. Things like the Showtime pack, things like the Star Time pack, like, those are great examples of skins done right. I don't care if it takes longer to make those skins, and I will wait as long as it takes. I am happy to wait months to ensure that the skins that we're going to get look good. Because right now, the problem is that a lot of these filler skins feel filler, right? So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say for skins before I keep going on that. Next thing I want to talk about is the gameplay. So the gameplay is really good, right? There's a reason that this game has as many people as it does. This is a very good game. This is a very, very well done game. It's well made. There's an inherent level of simplicity that is very charming to any age range. The game is, I'm not going to say horror, it's not a horror game, but it is got horror elements, and it does have that survival feeling that is very popular within modern Roblox right now, right? So it does a lot of things well, and the gameplay loop is very fun, very intriguing. The problem I have with the gameplay is twofold. Number one, and this is what I'm going to talk about first, is that there's a lot of things holding back the game from being even better, right? There are certain mechanics in the game that I think are just inherently a problem. One of my biggest ones with this is blackouts. Blackouts are a randomized mechanic that can happen on any floor starting on, I think it's floor 2 or 3. Obviously very low on those floors, but as you progress, the odds of that blackout get higher and higher to a maximum of either 30% or 25% if you get a certain card, right? My problem with this is very simple, and it's something that I think has been overlooked for quite some time. Blackouts are a very, very easy form of artificial difficulty. So if you don't know what artificial difficulty is, just breaking it down real quick, artificial difficulty is difficulty or a hard setting put in place by the game with very little that survivors or players can do on their end to counter this problem, right? You kind of just have to accept this problem and deal with it. That is artificial difficulty, right? Natural difficulty is difficulty based on skill expression. So the more skillful you are at the game, the better off you'll be at the game and dealing with these problems, right? Natural difficulty is when there is a solution to the difficulty. Artificial difficulty is when there is nothing you can do to make the difficulty easier and instead have to just play around it. And blackouts are a very good example of artificial difficulty, right? Because the chances of getting a blackout is completely random. It lasts an entire floor, and it severely hinders you as a player, right? And not only is it just extremely, extremely artificial difficulty, but it's also very dependent on what you're playing, like what platform you're on. It can hurt you really badly. I have a friend who literally cannot see at all during these events because his setup, like his computer or laptop and his settings and all that stuff, even on like the maximum brightness, just cannot see on blackouts, right? My setup is very bright, and I'm not gonna brag, but like I have a pretty good setup, I would say, right? And on my computer, blackouts aren't really that big of a problem for me because I have just inherently a brighter setup. because of my monitor, because of my settings, because of my computer and what it can handle, I don't have nearly as much of a problem when it comes to blackouts because I can see a lot better in these dark environments. But I also have a 10-year-old laptop, and that 10-year-old laptop does atrociously in blackouts, right? When I go and dog sit and I have to play on my laptop instead of my computer, because I'm not going to haul this giant PC tower everywhere I go, when I'm playing on that laptop, it's a lot worse to play this game on because of blackouts alone, right? I can't see anything on blackouts on that 10-year-old laptop because that's just how the laptop is, right? So, and like my friend, again, he really can't play in blackouts unless he's playing a certain character who makes the game brighter because literally just, he can't see, right? It completely takes away one of the core senses that we have. So, it's not only very artificial difficulty, but some players just have a harder time, and it's not talked about because I guarantee you as well, a lot of people who make content on the game, talk about this stuff, do all this stuff, are not the casual audience playing on their phones. These are people who have good setups to make content creation and don't have these problems, right? And don't experience these problems nearly as much. The only reason that I'm even talking about it is because I've experienced this problem and I know people who also experience this problem, right? If I didn't have that problem and I didn't talk with people who had that problem, I would be in the same boat that I would just be like, blackouts are fine. No, they're not. They're not fine. They're very artificial and they're not fun because some players just genuinely cannot do anything about it, right? Now, this isn't to say that you should just completely knock out blackouts permanently, because, like, that also probably wouldn't be fun, and that would remove a lot of nuance this game has, but there does need to be something done to blackouts. My suggestion was make it so it's no longer a permanent nuisance on a given floor. Make it so it can happen entirely randomly, right? It can happen in the middle of a floor, but it can also be resolved somehow. Give like a power box on every map that a player can go to fix it, right? Not only does this make the game more interesting because now you can start doing, like you can start branching into secondary objectives that players have to do to progress through the rounds, but also it eliminates the nuisance that is blackouts, right? It makes it so that there are ways you can play around it, and it makes it less artificial and more natural difficulty with being able to deal with blackouts as fast as possible, right? I think that would just be a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, but that's just me. So, blackouts need to be addressed, because right now it just makes the experience, especially for players on lower end devices, very abysmal. The last thing I want to talk about, and this is the other side of the fold when it comes to gameplay, is replayability. I don't know how many people have gotten everything done, right? It's a pretty big grind. I will say that. It's a big grind to fully 100% this game, right? To get every tune, every mastery, every research from all the Twisteds. It's a lot. It's a lot. But once you're done, there's nothing to do. Like, sure, you can go back, you can play the game as many times as you want. Nobody's stopping you. If you're having fun with this game, awesome. Great. Go play. Go play it. But there's nothing to do after a certain point, right? When you've beaten this game, you've beaten this game, you've seen everything. And there's nothing in the game right now that has any sort of replay value, in my opinion, right? There's one of the biggest reasons for this is that Ichor, the main currency in the game, really doesn't have anything to use after you've bought everything, right? I don't remember how much I have off the top of my head, but it's somewhere in the 40, if not 50,000 range. I have a lot. It might be 40,000 now, that because I had to like buy all the skins from this recent update, and that did drop me down a couple thousand. But with that being said, I still have 40,000 Ichor, or something around there, and I have nothing to do with it. There's no reason to play the game to grind more of it. because I don't need to spend it on anything, right? So there needs to be more use for Ichor. My suggestion was maybe having a system where you can spend Ichor to get buffs early in the game. Maybe you can like buy certain cards just flat out at the beginning of the game. Maybe not insanely good ones like Electrician or the Tech Savvy one, but ones like everyone starts with a random item maybe. Or, I don't know, everyone gets their ability cooldowns decreased by 5 seconds that early in the game. I don't know. But it would make it a lot more interesting because right now there's just no reason to get Ichor, to grind for Ichor. There's just no point. Once you've gotten everything, there's no point in grinding for Ichor. So, it's just, yeah, there's no reason to replay the game. There needs to be a reason to replay the game. Whether it's something like that or just some other mechanic that keeps you coming back. I think that needs to be something in the game. Another thing I had, kind of going back to the idea of challenge characters, is instead of having challenge characters or challenge trinkets, instead we just have hard mode, right? Make a hard mode for the game. I think a lot of players would actually play hard mode over the normal mode right now, and I think it'd be far more interesting, right? Make it so that, you know, maybe it starts with more Twisteds by design. So instead, floor 1 having 2 Twisteds, instead maybe on hard mode, floor 1 starts with 4, or something like that. Or make it so you have to complete way more machines per floor, or something like that. I think a hard mode would be very fun, and something that this game does need right now. It would add a lot of replayability back to the game, especially while we're waiting for bigger updates to come out. But that's just my suggestion, something that would be interesting. But yeah, like, there does need to be something to keep players coming back, because right now, I think it's not necessarily an issue short term. A lot of people are still playing the game, but down the line, long term, I think this will become a problem for Dandy's World, right? Where players who have done everything and are waiting for a new update aren't gonna want to play the game. Like, that's where I'm at right now. Personally, I love talking about this game. I have a lot of stuff that I could talk about with this game, but my problem is that I don't have any reason to come back and talk about this game. I really don't want to come back because there's nothing to keep me coming back and playing this game. There's no reason at all. So I think that there does need to be something that brings replayability. Another option just off the top of my head, and this one would be a lot goofier, but maybe add some milestones. Something that, like, if you play a certain character enough floors, you get some sort of reward, right? I know this would be a pretty big ask, but it would be interesting, right? Like, if you play this certain character for 100 floors, you're awarded with another special skin similar to the vintage skins, right? So, like, I don't know what that would be. You would have to kind of come up with that on the fly, but that would also be really interesting to give them like a milestone skin that would have some sort of appeal to play every character for 100, 200, 500 floors. You know what I mean? I don't know. It would be fun though. I think there does need to be some sort of replayability factor, something that takes a while to grind, or something that just brings back people. Because I think we're starting to get to the point where a lot of people don't have a reason to be playing this game, and unfortunately that means that they're going to seek other options. And right now there are other options popping up as well. I mean, I've really started to see the knockoff games that are coming into play, and while these games definitely aren't to the level of quality that Dandy's World is right now, that's not to say that they're bad. I played one recently, actually two recently, Anchored and Dolly's Factory or something like that, and I'm not going to say that they were fun, especially Dolly's Factory, no offense, but that game is definitely in an alpha state right now. There's very few characters and not a lot to do in that game. But I do see a lot of people already migrating to these other types of games with nothing else to do in Dandy's World, right? Like, Anchored the other day I saw had, I think it was 4,000 people already, and it, like, it only came out a few months ago or something like that, 1 or 2 months ago. I don't remember, but the point is, like, these other games are starting to pop up, and they are gaining traction, and part of that could just be because Dandy's World has nothing to do right now, right? If you're someone who's done everything, there's no reason to keep replaying the game unless you have other people wanting you to play the game or something to challenge yourself with. But the other problem is that a lot of the challenge elements of the game aren't fun to play into, right? Like Shrimpo or the brick or the piece of coal trinkets, like, those aren't fun challenges. Those are just challenges, but they're not fun, right? So there does need to be something in order to address the replay factor. I don't know what that is. Hopefully they do have something already in mind, and I would love to hear it once that comes around, but that is definitely a concern of mine that I have. But with all that being said, that is everything that I had on my notes in terms of this game. There are some other things that I think could be talked about, and if you have anything, I think that would also be awesome to hear, because I would like to know what you guys think, especially if you play the game. I would like to know your thoughts about what this game has and what this game could do better, your suggestions, anything like that. I would love to hear them, because I actually do really enjoy hearing about these suggestions and what people think about this game. I really do love hearing about it. One of my older videos did actually get quite a few comments talking about, I think it was the holiday update when I got that traction, and a lot of people had some really insightful comments, and I loved talking to the people that I did talk about who left that comment. It was really fun. I like talking to them. I went through some of them on a voice call with my friends too, and we all had a really good time talking to those people. So I would love to hear your thoughts as well for this game, and hopefully we can eventually see some of these thoughts put into fruition. But I don't know, we'll see. So I know this was like even more of just like a podcast slash rant video compared to my usual stuff, which at least has a little bit of flow to it. But I've had a lot of these suggestions in mind for a while now, and honestly, I just like to do podcast-like videos. I am hopefully going to get more of these pipelined as well. I've been talking to my friends about finally doing the one on Forsaken and the other asymmetrical horror games out there right now. So hopefully that works out so that we can start talking about those games as well, because if you've seen my channel, I also love talking about those games and what's going on over there, and I would love to have my friends on again so that we can talk about those games. But yeah, that's all I have. So if you guys want to share your thoughts, please, I would love to hear them. I'd love to hear those in, the comments or wherever you want to put those. I'd love to respond to those as soon as I can. I'll try to be better about responding to them too. I know I've been lacking lately on that department. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I'll see y'all very soon. Bye-bye.